Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'm Chris Tiongson. I'm a pediatrician in Fargo, and thank you for having me come talk about gun safety and gun violence prevention. And I started with this picture for a reason, because this picture is kind of what made me, want to start talking more to parents and families about gun safety. And so the first kind of school shooting that affected me was Columbine. It was 1999. My wife and I were youth group leaders at our church. Daughter was only 3 years old at the time, but when we had our first youth group meeting right afterwards, that was all we could talk about. And to just, I don't know, it finally hit me like, you know what, my kids, my youth group kids and my daughter, they could be the ones that this happens to. And sadly, that has been very true over the next 23 years. It's continued to happen. And so I don't know if anyone recognizes what candlelight vigil this is. And it's kind of hard to keep track of all of them. There's just so many of them. If you look closely at some of the shirts, you can see the letters MSD. So that's Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and that's and that's Parkland, which is what kind of started it for me. I mean, this could be Columbine, it could be Newtown, it could be Pittsburgh, it could be El Paso, it could be Uvalde, it could be one of way too many different things that it could be. And I think it was because the kids themselves, the survivors, like decided we were going to do something, that I needed to do something besides just be angry and sad. So that's kind of why I'm here. Advance to the next one. So I'm here really to talk about Be Smart. It's a program by which we talk about safe storage of guns in the home to hopefully reduce the risk of things like this happening. As a pediatrician, I know that prevention is much better than trying to rescue kids after the fact, and unfortunately, we can't always rescue everybody. Be Smart was developed by Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund to bring parents and adults together who are concerned about kids, guns, and safety. All right, so I'm a little nervous if this video is going to work. If I click on it, if you all can see it. Maybe.
When it comes to keeping kids safe, we're all on the same team. As adults, it's our responsibility to keep kids out of harm's way. Part of that is preventing them from getting their hands on guns. Every year, hundreds of kids and young people die because they get a hold of guns. So many of these tragedies, suicides, unintentional shootings, even school shootings could be prevented. What can you do about it? It's simple. If you own a gun, lock it up and encourage gun owners to do the same. Look, owning a gun is your right, but it's our responsibility to protect our kids and our communities. So please do your part. Be safe, be smart. We're in this together. Learn more about secure storage at besmartforkids.org.
All right. So the idea of the Be Smart program is built upon three things that we think everybody probably can agree on. Number one, we want kids to grow up happy and healthy. We each have the right to make responsible decisions about how to protect our families, our homes, and our communities, including whether or not you have a gun at home or not. And if we can prevent even one child death from a gun or an injury, it's our responsibility really to do so. And this really isn't about changing laws or making policies or anything. It's just what can we do in our own homes as parents, even today, without having to wait for anyone else. Importantly, I just want to make sure that we have this information out there too, because the deaths from guns are also include suicide as a major part, especially in North Dakota. And it's one of the major reasons that kids die from guns in our state. And so just wanted to include these resources, especially calling attention to the new 988 suicide and crisis hotline. So what do we do, now that I've gotten to the point where like I feel like I need to do something. And sometimes we can do things in a fun way. We can share a message. Like last year, we're at Boo at the zoo, and we gave out candy and over 150 free gun locks to families that came, as well as sharing information about our program. And yes, that is me dressed as Ted Lasso. I think this year I'm going to be a Pokemon guy, just so I could probably wear a few more layers and not freeze like I did last year. Other things that other Be Smart groups have done have even presented to law enforcement, which is an important partner for us too. And one of the groups in Woodbury, Minnesota, had the law enforcement agencies pass out Be Smart pamphlets for every person who applied for a gun permit. And to me, it you know, anytime you talk about guns, it feels like it could be very controversial or you might offend someone. But I don't know, as a pediatrician, I think it's not really different than talking about bike helmets, car seats, and seatbelts. It's just something that we need to talk about to make sure kids are safe. So kind of trying to approach it in that sense, and thinking about it as a public health issue. I mean, it's true that now, in the United States, firearms are the leading cause of death of children, more than cancer, more than car accidents, more than anything else. 1,800 kids under age of 18 are killed with guns every year, and an average of 5 children total per day. And overall, in the country, when kids are killed with guns, most of those, 54%, are homicides. That's about 1,000 kids murdered per year, or one child every 9 hours. And then additionally, 700 kids die by suicide using a firearm every year, which is about one kid every 13 hours. And then 100 children die unintentionally by playing with a gun that they found. And that's one child every 3 to 4 days. So how did this happen? How did firearms become the number 1 cause? Well, it used to be motor vehicle accidents, and since 2000, motor vehicles have become safer to ride in for kids. Why? Because we have advances in technology in cars, proper use of car seats and seat belts, and common sense safety practices. That's even during the same time that highway speed limits have gone up. But at the same time, kids dying from guns has actually gone up a little bit, and now past that. So safe storage of guns, keeping them locked and unloaded, is something that parents can do and can make a big difference. $4.6 million kids in the US live in homes with at least one loaded and unlocked gun in them. And it's not just that the unsecured guns in the home are a risk to a kid in that home. When school shootings and mass shootings are while they usually make the news and the headlines, most of the unintentional things, the so-called accidental injuries, happen at home. However, when there are mass shootings or school shootings, 3/4 of the time, the school shooters get a gun from a home of a parent or a close relative. And of course, we know this is very emotional, and that we all in North Dakota come from different life experiences, and probably most families have firearms and hunting and are good gun owners. Some people grew up in families like that. Some people didn't. Some people have been impacted by gun violence and are deeply affected by it. But really, the bottom line is up to the adults to make sure that the kids and teens don't have unsupervised access to firearms. This next slide is really kind of unnecessary to me. It's like you hear about these stories all the time, and there's no way we could keep this slide up to date. But here are a couple of examples. In Oxford High School in Michigan, the shooter got his gun from was purchased by his father. In Philadelphia, a 3-year-old was shot after being left alone in a car with a gun. A 7-year-old in South Carolina brought a loaded gun to school not long after Uvalde happened. And in Houston, 2 teenage boys ended up hospitalized after what was thought to be a possible murder-suicide. Every single one of these stories is one that we would love to be able to prevent, and so hopefully some of this information can help reduce the risk of that happening in our community and to people we love. So we'll talk about Be Smart, and SMART is an acronym. It stands for, the S is for secure all guns in your homes and vehicles. Model, model responsible behavior. A is ask about unsecured guns in other homes. R, recognize the role of guns in suicide. And T, tell your peers to be smart. So we'll go over each of those letters in a little more detail as we go along. So the first one is S, and that's secure guns in homes and vehicles. Like we mentioned before, that there are many of our kids are in either visit or live in homes with guns, and 13 million households with kids have at least one gun, and a majority of the kids know where the gun is. You may think that hiding it works. It doesn't necessarily work. So what do we mean by securing a gun? That means it should be inaccessible to kids. It should be locked, and hiding is not enough. I know if you've ever tried to hide Christmas presents, you know that hiding is not enough. So what would it look like? What could this look like in real life? Well, there are various different versions. There's the full-size gun safes, which can be quite expensive, a lockbox or a locker. If you're storing a gun in your car, then there are different versions for that too, as well as a gun case, trigger locks, or the least expensive would be the cable locks. So there are potentially affordable options that can help prevent tragedy. And in particular, the cable locks are ones that we tend to be able to give away. And if you come to Boo at the Zoo again this year, we have more locks to give out. One of the concerns that people will have is that if I lock up my gun, then I can't get to it when I need it in case of emergency or if I need to defend my family. There are versions that are biometric, so you can open it with your finger or other rapidly opening locks that will allow you access to your gun within a few seconds if needed, while at the same time keeping kids from them. Like child-proof caps on medicine. Could I get to my medication sooner without a child-proof cap? I could, but we want it to be child-proof for a reason. And having them secured and locked also helps prevent the risk of guns being stolen. Guns are frequently stolen, and in fact, nationally, 2 guns are stolen every 15 minutes, and half of all gun thefts happen from vehicles. So having some way to secure them not only keeps your family safer, but it also protects your gun from being stolen. M is for model responsible behavior. And as adults, we have the right, obviously, to have a gun or not have a gun, but we can't just count on the kids doing the right thing if they happen to find a gun. So not only do kids know where parents store their guns, about a third of kids have handled their parent's gun without their parent even knowing it. So that's another one of those scary statistics that just makes me worry about all the kids that are potentially at risk. And again, it's always the adult's responsibility to prevent unauthorized access to guns, and it's not up to a curious child to count on them to do the right thing. Even in situations where kids have had some sort of gun safety training, there was one study looked at kids who had taken a week-long gun safety course, and they still were just as likely to handle a gun as they found it. In fact, there was a story on 2020 that I think you can still find if you Google it, where they did gun safety training in a classroom, and then later on they left an unloaded gun in the classroom to see what kids would do with it. And at first, for the first few minutes, they were all reciting like their gun, stay away, don't touch it. And then after a while, they kept repeating those same safety messages, don't touch it, don't touch it. And yet they picked it up. So, certainly for younger kids, you can't just count on training. However, you should still, try to make sure that you impress upon them how potentially dangerous a gun could be, and that they should leave it alone and let a grown-up know. The A is ask about unsecured guns in other homes. Now, this I think is the tough one for North Dakota nice parents, right? Like, you don't want to step in anything or start any sort of potentially difficult conversation if you don't have to, but I think there could be a way to normalize it. Since we sort of assume that most families have some sort of firearm at home, that asking about it would make sense. And if you include it in the list of other things, like if your kid had a peanut allergy, you would ask about peanuts, or if they were allergic to cats, you would ask about cats, or about swimming pools, or about screen time, or older kids, is there, potential for alcohol access while they're over at your house, or if you're going to be if they're going to be driving the kids around, do you need to bring your car seat, or do they have one for you? So trying to normalize that a little bit more can be helpful. This next slide shows an example. So of doing it by text, which may be one way to kind of reduce some of the anxiety with it, or would be, thanks for inviting Michael over. For your awareness, he's not allergic to any food or pets. Thank you. Look forward to having him. And I have one more question. Do you have any guns in the home? And if so, are they secured? Kids can be very curious after all. Like, no, we don't have any guns, but I appreciate the question. I always ask too. R, recognize the role of guns in suicide. So this is another tough one. As kids get older, you may need to take even more precautions, as of course as they get more, they have greater skills and better problem solving, where they can kind of undo maybe some of the things that you thought were keeping your gun safe before. And then obviously the risk of self-harm goes up as kids get older too. So if there's a situation where you have someone who's in distress in your family, and an option would be to temporarily remove the guns from your home, like give them to a friend or a family member, again, have them locked up so you're not, increasing any risk for them and their family. Sometimes law enforcement can take them, or gun shops or gun ranges may also temporarily be able to hold them too. The reason for this is that suicide attempts by gun are by far the most lethal. 90% of people who attempt suicide with a gun die, as opposed to other means. It's very few actually, at least among kids, end up dying. When I worked in the hospital, I've taken care of probably hundreds and hundreds of kids who have, after suicide attempts, and almost all of them by medication overdose, and we can luckily save almost every single one of those kiddos and give them a second chance. But kids who use guns, we don't see them. They don't get that second chance. And how real is this risk? I mean, it's 20% of high school kids have seriously considered attempting suicide in the last year. That's 1 in 5. That is a lot of kids. And then of those kids, 41%, have easy access to guns in the home. You'll notice I have a big black bold 10 minutes on the screen there. And that is because that is all the time it takes. When researchers asked kids who survived a suicide attempt using a gun, many of the kids reported they thought about it for less than 10 minutes before they decided to try it. 10 minutes is not very long, and we know how impulsive teenagers can be. And to make an impulsive decision that you can't really get a second chance from, we need to try to intervene. That's one of the key tenets of suicide prevention, is creating time and space between someone in crisis and their means to committing suicide. And and even getting them past that 10-minute mark where maybe someone else can intervene can make a difference. The other sort of hopeful stat of that is that 70% of people who attempt suicide only do it once. They never attempt again. So if they are fortunate enough to have a second chance, then that's a blessing. So again, a little more information about the suicide prevention resources, and some signs to look out for if you're concerned that the loved one may be in distress or suicidal would be prolonged sadness and depression, changes in mood or behavior, hopelessness, sleeping too much or too little, withdrawing and isolation, aggression or agitation, increased drug or alcohol use, and talking about killing themselves. Certainly when people talk about it, we have to take them seriously. T is the last letter, and that's tell everyone to be smart. It's certainly a good start to be able to do things to make your own home and your family's home safer. But in order to make our community safer, we'd love to be able to have this message spread out amongst more people. So think about if there are some people that you would like to text or to talk about, or thinking ahead to Thanksgiving or Christmas if you're traveling. What are the potential safety things that you need to think about going over to their home as far as like unsecured firearms. And then also think if there are any other organizations or groups that you think would be interested in hearing our message too. Here's our contact information. Martha Wheeler is the lead, and Cheryl Biller is also another contact as well. As you can always you can reach out to me too. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I'm happy to try to answer questions if you have any. See, Shan, I'm trying to think which slide. I guess I did not notice your chat at the time. Which slide were you talking about with 1 to 24 years?
I think it's the car accidents to the.
Yes. Okay. Let me go to that one. This one. Yes. So this one from the CDC and the New England Journal did include kids people up to 24. I'm just used to calling everybody a kiddo. And it includes young adults in that group too, but it is also true for 18 and under. The same unfortunate statistics. All right, well, thank you. That's all that I have.
Well, thank you, Chris, for coming today. It was good. Good
Certainly,
info.
thank you.